This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
It's always a pleasure to have the vice chairman of the America First Policy Institute Center for American Security, Fred Fleitz, join us. He, get this, quarter of a century. He must drink from the fountain of youth because he doesn't look it. But over 25 years, this gentleman, this patriot, has been active. Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the Department of State, and even the U.S. House Committee on Intelligence. Fred, it's been a few months. How are you, my friend?
Great to be here, Tom.
We have had a lot in the news with our former president, who you admittedly worked for, Mr. Trump. And I wanted to, and Fred's aware of this, I'm going to go to a clip from Fox News of an interview with former Attorney General, who I have no doubt Fred knows, Bill Barr. And I was a fan of Bill's. He interviews talking about the Trump indictment. I want to get Fred's thoughts on what Bill Barr says. And I can't play all the clips. Marco Rubio defended Trump. Our U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan defended Trump. There's a lot of perspectives and opining across America from leaders. But after we hear former AG Bill Barr, then I want to get Fred's interpretation and thoughts on that. This is from Fox News.
And former Attorney General Bill Barr, who served in the Trump administration, knows the former president very well. Mr. Attorney General, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you. What about this chief argument that comes up for the president's allies and his legal team that this should have been handled under the Presidential Records Act, not this Espionage Act charge and other federal statutes that were used here?
Well, it started out under the Presidential Records Act and the archives trying to retrieve documents that Trump had no right to have. But it quickly became clear that what the government was really worried about were these classified and very sensitive documents. I was shocked by the degree of sensitivity of these documents and how many there were, frankly. And so the government's agenda was to get those, protect those documents and get them out. And I think it was perfectly appropriate to do that. It was the right thing to do. And I think the counts under the Espionage Act that he willfully retained those documents are solid counts. Now, I do think we have to wait and see what the defense says and what proves to be true. But I do think that even half what Andy McCarthy said, which is if even half of it is true, then he's toast. I mean, it's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very damning. And
yeah, there you go, and we can stop that right there. So he is toast. That's a quote from Bill Barr. So, Fred, what's your interpretation of what's happening? And I know you haven't read them, but the documents. That's from the former AG. That's a pretty big deal that he said that.
Well, I completely disagree. The Espionage Act was passed in 1917. It's barely been used in the over 100 years it's been in place. It was passed to prosecute people for spying against the United States or for intending to do so or trying to do so. Nobody thinks Donald Trump was going to spy against the United States. He may have had some documents that made it to Mar-a-Lago that they shouldn't have been there, but we've seen this with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Mike Pence. Basically, we had incredible overreach, prosecutorial overreach, and an incredible double standard where Trump is being prosecuted on a bogus case of espionage that easily and should have been brought against Hillary Clinton, but it wasn't.
Now, I'm seeing nationally, Fred, I mentioned U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan in Alaska. Here in Alaska, of course, Congresswoman Mary Peltola reserves judgment. Lisa Murkowski, U.S. Senator, reserve judgment. But nationally, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis, running for governor of Florida, Chris Christie, across the board, even other challengers of Trump on the presidential playing field, they're stepping up to defend Trump or to impugn the system. And it sounds like you feel the same way. This is an archaic rule. Do you think that's telling in and of itself that Trump's opponents are coming out, many of them, to support him?
I think so. Look, Tom, it's a very serious matter to prosecute a former president. That's what happens in tin pot dictatorships, where the former head of state goes to jail when the new guy comes in. But to prosecute a former president who is running to come back as president and is the chief rival, political rival to a sitting president, this is an extremely serious matter. And to bring such charges on such weak legal grounds on an act that's just never used, I just don't think the American people are going to think that this is fair. That's why Trump's support is surging after this indictment.
Yeah, I was looking at CBS News in the polling. He's above 60%. I'll be honest. I don't believe that Ron DeSantis is low 20% range. I don't. I think he's gaining every week. I don't care about the Twitter flub with Elon Musk. I would not have launched with him. I would have launched on Fox News. But that being said, I don't think that's completely accurate. But even if there is a margin of error, you're correct that Trump is surging to some degree. And I will tell you this, with regard to the optics, the more this exacerbates, and he's going into court this week, I think the more there's a distrust that percolates with American voters. We just had Danielle Alvarez from the GOP, a national spokesperson, talking about voting early and bankyourvote.com. And by the way, they said you're an all-star. I was talking to the head spokesperson, and I mentioned you were going to be on the show, and they're a fan of yours, at least the head shed at RNC. But that said, you're calling in nonpartisan for this call, but I think that there is going to be more eyebrow raising as Trump's case continues. Now, I know you can't speculate. You could speculate, but I'm not going to ask you to do that. You're not Nostradamus on how this unfolds and ends. But just him going into, back to my word, optic, him going into federal court this week, been there, done that. They can't take photos. I don't know if you know that, but they can draw him and sketch it, but there will be no photos in federal court. It's prohibited. So you won't see that. But how do you think that plays out? I mean, for his side, fuels their fire, and for the anti-Trumpsters, fuels their fire, probably. Correct?
Well, let me first comment on the Bank the Vote people. That is such an important initiative. We can't let the Democrats eat our lunch again on early voting and vote by mail. My organization, the America First Policy Institute, is working very, very hard to make sure Americans vote early.
There you go. I hear I said I'm nonpartisan in this interview, but I guess you're not. I love it. Good for you.
Well, I mean, it isn't a partisan matter. The fact is that this is going on in America right now. This is how America votes. We can wish that it was different and we go back to the old days. That's not going to happen. If you want your candidate to win, you have to vote early. You can't worry that there's going to be a snowstorm, which is a big deal in Alaska, that may stop you from getting to the polls.
We got to get Fred up here to fish. To go salmon and halibut fishing. Listen, corporate sponsors out there, he's not going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it. Get him up here to speak, and then we'll do it in the summer. My son and dad just went fishing and got a bunch of winter kings in Seward. So we're going to eat that tonight, actually.
But, you know, about your question, I think the optic of this is going to be very bad for the Justice Department and the Biden administration because, you know, there have been so many bogus charges thrown at Trump. And after the recent report on the prosecution for the fake Russia collusion charges, the fake 51 intelligence officers letter on the Hunter Biden laptop, I think the American people are fed up. They just don't believe it when Democrats make charges against Donald Trump.
Yeah. No, it's true. By the way, Fred's with America First Policy Institute Center. He was a senior analyst, CIA, on and on. But, I mean, I look at your list. Linda McMahon, Larry Kudlow, Brooke Rollins, Chad Wolf now. You have such an all-star team. I could go down the list. You're on there. Do the majority of your colleagues at America First agree with what you just said about Trump?
Well, look, we are a nonprofit, so we're not endorsing anyone in the race. And I think there's a lot of good candidates. We got to get Joe Biden out, and I'm going to support whoever the Republican nominee is. But yes,
of course,
we all think that this was unfair, and we're seeing most of the Republican nominees or candidates for president say that too. I give DeSantis a great deal of credit for speaking out and saying that this is unfair.
Me too.
I know some of the
I love Ron DeSantis,
but I think you need to do the right thing.
Well, you can go to AmericaFirstPolicy.com. You can sign up. You can donate to them. Fred's Not Asking, I Am. It's an amazing group. And Fred's the vice chairman of it, of the American security sector there. So, Fred, keep up the good work. It's always a pleasure. Your thoughtfulness is appreciated. So is your patriotism. We'll get you back over the summer, hopefully to Alaska. Thanks for your time.
Good to be here. Thanks.
You betcha. That's Fred Fleitz. I'm Tom Anderson. Stay with us. Good morning. Hello, everybody. This